Hi, my name is Harvey Withington from the CubeWise Code team, and I'm coming at you from Melbourne, Australia. Welcome to this presentation, Building the Next Generation of Forms, Active Forms with Slice. And it's my great pleasure to introduce Lewis Rincon. Lewis boasts over 15 years experience in the TM1 world, showing an unwavering commitment to helping businesses conquer their financial and operational hurdles. From his early days as an end user to later roles in consulting, in-house and currently in the CubeWise Code team, he now brings you a new and powerful way to build Excel reports with IBM Planning Analytics. I love Slice, so this is a pretty exciting one for me too. If you have questions, please pop them in the chat or the Q&A. I'll answer what I can, and Lewis can handle all the hard ones at the end. And without further ado, I'll hand over to Lewis to boggle your mind with the possibilities afforded by Slice. Lewis.
Thank you, Harvey. Thanks for that nice intro. My name is Luis Rincon, and I'm coming to you from beautiful Mexico. So today I'm going to talk about building the next generation of active forms with Slice. Okay, so let me just share my screen. And here we go. So what is a Slice? For those who don't know, a Slice is an Excel add-in for planning analytics. It's super easy to install, it's fast, clearly connects directly to TM1 through the REST API. It has full support for hierarchies all the way through, and also is backwards compatible, so you can actually run your perspective reports as well with it. Okay, it's a nice and simple toolbar, as you can see on the screen, quite intuitive, so there's nothing, it's not rocket science really to use it. So what is it that we're going to cover today? Just briefly, we're going to warm up.
Your screen at the moment.
Okay, let me just try that again. And all right, if you give me the okay, that'll be good.
Oh, good. That looks way better. Thanks.
Nice, awesome. So as I was saying, if you can see, is Slice is quite an easy toolbar to use. And what we're going to cover today, at the best of our abilities, will be a quick warm-up with Slice, just some handy tips for the Cube viewer, and also how to apply view styles. I'm going to tell you very shortly what is an MDX form, in case you're not familiar with the concepts, its components. Also, we're going to use the MDX Lab, which is a tool part of the Slice Explorer. And whilst we're going to be creating MDX forms, we're going to use hierarchies as well, which is a very powerful thing. Also, we're going to create on-the-fly calculations using calculated members in MDX. And as a bonus, I thought about displaying asynchronous views in Excel. So, okay, we have that done. For those who don't know what an asynchronous views is, it's essentially selecting for each column the right combination of elements instead of stacking dimensions or hierarchies. You'll see what I mean when I get to that part of the demo. So what is an MDX form? So it's a brand new way to build Excel reports with planning analytics, right? It's driven by one MDX query, so you can combine that with the power of Excel. So essentially the limit is your imagination, to be honest. Fast, definitely fast, and very flexible, probably more flexible than traditional active forms. And the beauty of it as well, you can stack dimensions or hierarchies on other rows or columns, which obviously makes it very powerful. How do they work? Well, one simple Excel function, there's nothing more to it, and only just one MDX statement. So that makes the report very flexible and very useful. Not to mention also that the maintenance becomes very simple because you only have one MDX query to look after, right? Obviously, as I said before, expand, collapse columns. We can create calculated members. We're going to do something very simple so you get the idea of what I mean by that. And also you can have more than one MDX form in the same report or in the same sheet. So for all those active form hackers, this is a bit of a breathing space for you. Okay, so that one single Excel function has only 6 arguments, very simple arguments. The ID, which is automatically assigned, you can also amend it to the report naming convention that you wish or that you have at your work. The server, of course, or TM1 instance name, the MDX query itself. It has a write back flag, but obviously rules and TM1 security take precedence. You can also display different attributes, not only necessarily aliases, so it could be any, say, for example, string attribute for that matter. And last but not least, we have the format range, which is very similar to what you used to with active forms. Okay, so with no further ado, let's go back into Slice. So here is my Slice ribbon on the top. I'm going to click on my Slice Explorer, so the window is open, and I'm going to log into my TM1 server. You will notice I wasn't actually prompted for a password or anything like that, so Slice retains your credentials, so I find that quite actually handy and easy to do. And you have the sort of used to the same navigation applications, dimension, cubes, processes, chores. There's a bunch of really cool tools around administration that I won't go through in this session, but definitely take a look at that. Also, some tools. In this case, we're going to be looking at the MDX lab just to test our queries. And so let's get onto it. So I'm going to open the general cube. The GL cube is just like a standard GL cube. Everyone is familiar with this, I believe. You have the different dimensions with different color coding. And some of the quick wins with Slice, or what we call the hidden gems, are actually in the context menu. Say, for example, if I right-click here, and this net income, and I have my context menu, essentially, I can swap rows or columns, I can edit the subset, or I can keep a particular element with its descendants or children and so on and so forth. So let's just see this breakdown of this net income by just clicking into it. So this is a quick way of accessing the list of elements that make up that particular consolidated element without having to go into the subset editor. Something else that you can do, if you go, say, for example, on the dimension that I have on the columns, which is my measured dimension, I can actually swap by other dimensions that I have available. So let's say, for example, I want to see this net income breakdown across different regions, right? So again, just one single click and you're there, right? Maybe I want to see it by period and so on. So it's quite easy to do. Something else that I quite like, let's say if we pick an element, Finland, and you can see I can actually enter data here. Let's say I do 120,000. It recalculates my view, but for whatever reason I made a mistake. I can always go into this little button that I quite love. It's called undo data entry. Hit that button, and it's going to restore the value that was originally in that cell. So that's very handy in case you are entering budgets and so on. Something else that we can do is create custom calculations. For example, let's pick cost of sales and maybe net income. Right click, come here into custom rollup, and let's call this calculation percentage of net income. And we're going to say is a custom calculation. Let's pick the cost of sales, and just something simple. Let's divide it by the net income. And I want to replace my list. So essentially, I just want to have a look at what I'm calculating. There you go. So I have my percentage with a red marker indicating that is a custom rollup. And below, I can expand that and see what are the two other rows that I was using to derive that calculation. So that's just simple, quick wins in the view of Slice. Something else that you can do is in the gear icon, you can collapse, expand different things. If, for example, I want to see in my hierarchy panel, as I said, this is hierarchy aware throughout, and you can collapse them as well. And And last but not least, we also can apply different view style editors with different color coding and so on. I'm going to pick the Horizon one that we designed for this conference. And you can actually go and edit it, right? It's quite simple to amend it. All you need to do is click in the area that you want to amend. You can edit the color code. You can change the text color. You can pick a different font, also the font size, and so on. So it really, all you need to do is click and keep editing your view as you wish for. Save it or create a new one and then save it, and you're ready to go, right? Okay, so I'm going to close this view, and now I'm going to go into a different cube, this cube called Listing Analysis Solution. It's a simple cube, 2 dimensions. The first dimension, which is my listing, this is a cube that is holding listings from Airbnb or any other rental platform that you can think of. And I have different hierarchies for this listing. So I have my host, I have a neighborhood, and I have my room type. So we're going to be using these 3 hierarchies just to demonstrate what you can do with MDX forms. Okay, so if I open my cube view and then again I expand my hierarchy panel, I can see the hierarchies I was telling you about. Let's apply the Horizon view style. And the first thing I'm going to do is right-click, go into Export to MDX form. So let's export that into my book 1. Click OK. And here I am, right? So next to the remove TM1 functions, there's a little button, which is a toggle to show the format area that I just want you to see that is quite similar to active forms. Let me just expand this a little bit more. There you go. And here is my first MDX. So this is automatically generated by Slice. If I was to copy that MDX, for example, and head back to my Slice Explorer and open my tools, and I'm going to open my MDX lab and paste that query there. There's a little icon that is called Format Code. Just need to click there and it formats my code, so it's easier to read, right? If I run that query, you will see exactly the same as I was looking in my view, and as you can actually see in my Excel report. So next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to fast forward due to some time constraints that we have for this session. And I'm going to show you what I'm going to do. So I have my 3 hierarchies that I mentioned to you just now. And I created a validation list. So this is just a simple Excel validation list, nothing fancy about it. And we're going to be choosing, say, for example, I want to see my neighborhood breakdown in this report. So if I go and say rebuild, there you go. So now I have a breakdown by neighborhood. Across my columns, I have my price and my average price. So let's just quickly take a look at that MDX query in my MDX lab. So it actually makes more sense also to you. All I need to do is just remove these double quotes that are coming from Excel. And as you can see, on my columns, I have my price and I have my average price. And on the rows, I'm just requesting the neighborhood hierarchy by its children. And that's it. So if I run that query, I'll have exactly the same thing, right? So heading back to my MDX form. So all I'm doing here is just playing with Excel by replacing the hierarchy name by the dropdown, and there you go, right? Within a matter of a minute, you have a full dynamic MDX form report, which allows you to swap from different hierarchies, and you don't have to worry about resizing cells or anything like that. Okay, so let's move on to the next challenge. So let's add more MDX statements here that we can switch in between, right? So as you can see at the very top, I have 6 rows. I have 1 MDX for my host, 1 MDX for my neighborhood, 1 MDX for my room type, which is basically what I've done in the previous report that I was showing you. And now I want to start nesting or stacking dimensions across rows and columns, right? So let's copy this MDX, and I'm going to go into my MDX lab first just to test it and see if it works okay. So once again, let me delete that, paste that, remove double quotes, and I'll explain this very briefly for those who are not very familiar with MDX. So I'm using a subset called a default, which is essentially a subset that holds all the measures I have in my measure dimension. I'm going to place that on the columns. And then on the rows, I'm going to stack first my listing hierarchy, the room type, broken down by its children. And I'm going to stack then a second hierarchy called the neighborhood hierarchy, but instead of using the function children, I'm going to use a simple TM1 subset that I just handpicked a couple of suburbs, which I call my whereabouts. If I actually run that query, we will see that I have that room type, neighborhood, and across all my columns, I have all my measures. So let's go back to Excel. And let's pick this query. Okay, don't know what this is. There you go. All right, let's rebuild this sheet, and now we have it. So once again, all the formatting comes across, right? I have my listings in one column, and then I have also my suburbs on the other column. So what if we actually want to swap the neighborhood on the columns stacked on top of my measures and leave the listings where they are on the rows? So again, I don't probably need to see that again. All I'm going to do is just run it straight in my report. I won't go to my MDX lab, run that, and there you go. Right, so once again, simple and easy way to start shifting your report from rows and columns without major effort in terms of hacking or amending or working out different ways to achieve this sort of performance, this sort of behavior. Last but not least is top listings, top 10. That's something very common in all app technologies. So. But again, for those who are not familiar, it's always good to go to the lab and test your query before you actually run the report, right? So again, on my columns, I have two measures, price measure and average price. And on the rows, I have my top count based on my average price, which is right here. Okay, so let's run this query. And there you go. So you will notice that the listing, it has only a code. So it's ID, and then I have my price, and then my average price. So let's see how that actually runs in Excel. And let's say top 10 listings, rebuild, and there you go. Now, why do I see the descriptions here? Very simple. Is because in my NDX form, there is a parameter called attributes, and which is my cell B17, and that cell is exactly this cell. So I'm requesting to TM1 to give me the actual description and not the code. So that's how simple you can implement the display of different attributes, right? Okay, so let's go to fast forward again. And now we're going to use calculated members. So those are members that obviously don't live within your measures dimension. You probably want to derive a calculation. So I'm going to copy this query again back into my MDX lab just to test it. And say paste. And let's see if, sorry, the code formatter has to help me out here. There you go. So the first thing I'm doing is defining the member called minimum revenue. So that doesn't actually exist in my measure dimension. And I'm using two measures to derive that. One is the average price, and I'm multiplying that by the minimum available nights for that particular listing. I'm going to place that on my columns right here. And on the rows, I'm going to do a top 10, a top count. So I'm combining my previous top 10 query, and I'm adding an extra calculated member. So if I actually run that query, you will see that the calculated member is now with a red marker, right? So let's go back to there, and let's say minimum revenue, and let's review that sheet. And here it is, right? So I have exactly that. So what would happen if I want to insert another MDX form in there? All I need to do is right-click, go to Slice, Insert Form, MDX Form. Let's just pick the same cube for the purpose of demonstrating, and the default view, hit OK. Now have a second MDX form. You will notice that it has a different formatting. That's essentially because that's the default, but all I need to do to keep the same format is take this to the top, hit enter. I don't need this anymore, so I can actually delete that, and I can rebuild this sheet, right? So once again, it's all formatted. If I wanted to have a different MDX, so all I need to do is maybe reference the top 10, for example, hit enter. I don't need this either, so we can delete that and review that sheet. And there you go, right? So this is how simple you can start building 2, 3, or 4 more active forms in the same report. And last but not least, let's see what asynchronous views are, right? So I'm going to click copy and go into my MDX form. Sorry, into my MDX lab, and have a look at what asynchronous views look like. So I'm going to run that. Basically, I'm selecting a specified combination of columns by my account on the rows, right? This is how it actually looks here. And if I go to my MDX query and I say rebuild sheet, well, there you go. And obviously, I hacked something similar that I've done before. So instead of Northern Ireland, maybe I want to see Wales, rebuild that, and I can actually start entering data if I may wish to do so. Okay, so that's as fast as I could do asynchronous views, but I want to just briefly show you that there's some resources that you can look into it. So first of all, download Slice. It's for free. Try it, play with it. It's very intuitive. It's super easy to use. And if you want to start exploring a little bit more, we have this blog called Get the Most Out of the MDX Forms with Slice. Also, we have a blog that talks about how to create asynchronous views and how you can use them either on the Slice or Arc Viewer for that matter, as well as on Excel. Last but not least, have a look at our features, follow us on LinkedIn, and if there are any further questions after the session, you can also feel free to drop me an email. So with this in mind, I'm going to hand back to my good friend, Harvey.
Thanks for that, Lewis. That was excellent and excellent timing. We've got 6 minutes left. So if anyone's got any questions, you can pop them in the chat or the Q&A section. We didn't build any up as we went. So our colleague Andre's on here answering questions already, so he got most of them.
Oh, nice.
It'd be pretty hard to find a question that we knew the answer to that Andre wouldn't. So,
yeah, one of the most important things I always recommend to people is just to give it a go, right? Like try Slice, really simplify a lot of things in terms of usability, performance-wise. We putting a lot of enhancements in the latest release, so it's quite fast in terms of how it can render your data. So give it a chance and you won't be disappointed, I can assure you that.
So can you tell people how much they can try Slice with very little risk? Because I think a lot of people, when they go to try Slice, the question that was asked was, can you have both Slice and Perspectives add-ins active at the same time? And the answer is that you cannot, but you can keep them both installed and just disable one, so it's not too invasive. But we have actually designed the experience to be very uninvasive. So can you just explain a bit about how you would trial it without completely uninstalling TM1 or anything on your machine?
Yeah, well, it's Slice, as Javi said, it comes with an executable file that you can run locally in your machine. So all you need to do is install Slice, disable the Perspectives add-in, and let Slice take you through the wonders of TM1 to get the feeling of that look and feel. There's no risk whatsoever that you are exposing yourself at all. And if you want to revert back to Perspectives for whatever reason you may have, you can always disable the Slice add-in or not start it at all, because as I said, it's installed locally, and your Perspectives add-in will run as usual, right? So it's very.
Kevin asks, how hard is it to switch between the two?
Sorry, say that again, Harvey.
Kevin Fry asks, how hard is it to switch between the
No,
two?
it's not really hard. It's just a matter of a couple of clicks here and there, and then you'll be ready to go. But the most important thing is not about the switching. It's just about experiencing what Slice can give you. Because as Ben rightly mentioned at the beginning of Horizon, Perspectives eventually is going to go, right? So it's a good way, it's a good time to start familiarizing yourself with the tools available out there.
And can you talk about backward compatibility a little bit? So if I open a Perspectives report in Slice, does it work? And will it change the report or anything?
No, but look, it's backwards compatible, as I mentioned in my presentation. The only thing that you won't be able to do is if you are using hierarchies with Slice, because it obviously supports hierarchies throughout, and maybe you design some MDX forms, as I just presented, that won't run obviously in hierarchies, right? So that's probably the only caveat. But of course, Slice can run Perspectives reports without problem.
Okay, and one more question. Is there an official deprecation date for TM1 Perspectives? That's a good question.
I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know exactly the date. That's probably more a question for IBM. But for whatever the date might be, we're ready to back you up with Slice.
All right, cool. Well, we're pretty much at the end. So, well, there might be one more question. Let's see.
And by the way, guys, you have on the handouts, you can click there and download the links I just showed you on screen. So feel free to download. You have all the information you need there to download Slice, play with it, and try to build something as simple as
that handout's that last couple of slides that you showed, right? So download. And yeah, I'll just pop up the feedback form and we'll close off. Thanks very much, Lewis.
No worries. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and keep enjoying this great conference. I'll see you around.